Hello, everyone, and welcome to MBA 590 Digital Marketing Week 4. I got to turn down my feed. Sorry, I had to wait up because I was recording those videos. Hopefully, that's a little bit better and won't be blowing your ears off anymore. Um, okay, so got a couple of things to talk about today. We're going to talk about the group projects. We're going to talk about the conceptual exam, and we're going to talk about social media ROI. And we're going to, yeah, that's it. Okay. But just as I always like to do, a quick announcement, at the top of the hour. Just make sure that if you're going to ask a question on the feed, that you put it in as soon as possible because there's a delay between when I see your questions and when I can respond to them. So it gives me a second to kind of get them all in there. Um, yeah, so, and then next thing to talk about is just quickly recap what this week's activities are. So you want to watch the videos from Seth Litton at Transact if you haven't already. We have all the teams set up already for that, so unfortunately we don't need any more teams for that project. But still, I recommend you watch the videos just to see kind of what his company does, right? I think it's a very unique and interesting company, but it's a company that it's a direction a lot of firms are moving into in the marketing space, which is to play the role of kind of arbitrage between large companies and the consumer, essentially. Check it out. It's a very interesting set of discussions, I thought. In addition to watching those videos, you also want to watch the week four videos, 1 through 5, which are up already. Um, this week, we're talking about social media strategy, and we're also talking about social media monitoring tools. So definitely check those out. I think they're kind of a great way to kind of break into this space. And then, kind of complementing that, we have an article from a couple of years ago. You might have heard about this about the follower factories that existed that would kind of artificially create these large factories of followers for particular brands, and a lot of times celebrities, politicians, etc. So check that out, and there are a set of questions up on Top Hat that has been assigned to you to look at. By the way, you'll notice if you look ahead, week 5 has already been posted, but there's no reading for week 5, and that's because during week 5 is when the group project introduction is due. So I don't like assigning readings kind of during that time. Well, more importantly, it's also when you're going to get your take-home exam. So I don't like assigning things during those time periods. So you won't have another reading again until week 6. Um, Small comment on the transact job position. So all of them have been filled out. So you should have received an email from me by now introducing you to Seth, and Seth is going to introduce you to whoever is working on that particular project. Okay? So that's the status on what the transact projects are going on. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, because I won't have a time by the time I talk to you next week, it'll be 2 days before it's due. I want to talk to you a little bit about what the group project actually entails, and I've had a couple of questions about this. Um, First of all, I want to make it clear 100% that the document that you receive on Moodle about the team project is not meant to be an exact set of things you need to cover. I honestly want the best digital marketing plan you can write, and however you want to write that is fine with me, right? But I do have it set up kind of with some questions that are kind of things to think about with respect to what's going on with your digital marketing efforts, right? That's essentially what this is. So don't think of it as something you have to do verbatim, right? Think of it more as a guideline to what's going on. Related to that, I had some questions about what we actually needed to turn in for the first project. And let me at this point pull up the document so that you can actually see. Oops, that's not the one I want. I want this, but I need to edit it real quick. There we go. Okay. So, there you go. It's kind of really big, but this should work. Let me see if I can fix that a little bit. Um, can I make this go away? There we go. Okay. So there you go. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there you go. Should be able to see it pretty clearly now. Um, so you see the group project document. You'll see the marketing plan. You know, let me quickly talk about the formatting for this document. So what I do not, absolutely do not want to see is I do not want to see, question 4A and then an answer. Question 4B and then an answer, right? I want a narrative document, right? This should be a document that you could hand to a member of the C-suite for the firm you're working with, and they would automatically be able to understand it without having ever seen the document we're looking at right now, right? I also had a couple questions about, things like what is your value proposition and revenue model? And anytime I say "your" in this document, I'm basically referring to the company, right? I should edit that one, but it should say what is the company's value proposition and revenue model, right? Um, and for the introductory assignment, really all I need is part four, this part right here, right? Parts one, two, and three, if you want to start getting them in order and kind of putting them together for the final document, that'd be great. But really, all I'm going to be grading on is part four for this introductory assignment, right? And what I'm really looking for is essentially a short description of the company, how do they kind of make money to the extent that that's useful for the digital marketing plan? And then why is the digital marketing plan appropriate for them, right? If you cover those three facts, you got most of the important aspects. Now, ideally, in the introduction, you would start to set up kind of foreshadowing the environmental situation analysis and the implementation and control of the plan, right, and the tactics, right? But you may not have enough content at this point to actually do that. Uh, you may have to actually carry those through. So, you know, to the extent to which you can do it, that's great. Otherwise, you can always wait till you're done and come back and revise this section. Okay. Um, so as I said, I don't want question answers. I don't want like what is the product and then an answer and then what is your. I want a narrative description. That being said, I also don't want just like 20 pages of single column, single space text, right? Use formatting when appropriate. Make sure you have your document broke up into different sections. Use bold when appropriate. Use italics when appropriate, right? There's some description up here at the top of formatting guidelines, but really, as long as you keep it consistent throughout your presentation, um, I don't really care too much about the exact formatting that you're using. Um, I do want you to see you citing your references, right? So if you make a statement that is not logically, can't be logically concluded from the last couple of statements you've made, right? Then there should be a reference or maybe a pointer to an exhibit or something along those lines, right? So as much as possible, try and justify what you're talking about. Um, so what do I actually want for this first one? So I'm gonna want, as I mentioned, I want part four. I want you to describe what the product is, right, or service. What is the value proposition, and why is digital marketing campaign appropriate for this company? For several of you, right, will be working with firms that have specific questions, like they want to do a multicultural campaign, right, or they want to look at doing an email nurturing campaign, right? If that's the case, then this introduction should be tailored to that idea, right, and not specifically generically to the company. Okay. Again, use headings when appropriate. Use italics and bold when appropriate. Um, just make it a nice narrative document that you can turn in. Hopefully that's understandable. Okay. So let's switch away from that. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. All right, about those. Um, let me see what else. So I do want to talk about that document is due on February 5th by midnight, essentially, right? So that's 1 week from Wednesday, right? So you should be working on that over the course of this week, right? To turn it in on time. On February 5th, when you turn in that document, that actually the morning of February 5th, you will also get your conceptual exam, right? And this is one of two individual exams you have. As this is the online class, obviously it should be pretty obvious that it's open note, open book, open internet, whatever, right? But you'll get the exam. It should be posted Wednesday morning, and you will have 1 week to work on it, so it'll be due on February 12th at midnight. Okay. So that's the major aspects of what's coming up, right? So both the project introduction are going to be due on the 5th, and the conceptual exam is going to be due on the 12th. So the last thing I want to talk about today, so this will be a little bit shorter than last week, is on social media ROI. And again, if anybody's watching and has a question, please feel free to type it into the chat. I will do my best to get to it quickly. Okay, just pulling up this slide deck. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So, sorry, new computer, so every now and then I have to like kind of reformat everything. See if I present over here. No, that's not gonna work. Never mind. Um, Maybe it'll just work if I just blow it up big. Okay, we'll do it that way. Window capture. Okay. Okay. So as we were talking, right? So there, the reading on social media ROI I thought was very interesting, and partially because what it does is it describes all the different ways in which social media can be used to generate a return on investment, and it breaks it down in interesting ways. Um, and the real goal here, right, is rather than thinking about social media as necessarily creating a return on profits. Oh, that's a little high, huh? You should be thinking about it as generating interest in the brand on social media, right? Um, can you get a return on investment from your consumers, right, rather than from direct sales? Can you invest a little bit of money in social media so that your consumers invest a lot of time and effort into social media for you? Because one, it's essentially, free advertising, but the second is that honestly, the best, we know from history, decades of marketing research, that the best advertising for you is what your consumers say about you. Okay. So that's really the goal here. And, let's see. And so there's this one table I really like, which has all the relevant metrics for social media applications organized by the key social media objectives. And I think this is really important for you to take a look at as you start to work through your group projects, right? So um, if you want to increase brand awareness, right, then there's a certain set of activities that are going to work better. If you want to increase brand engagement, then a different set of activities work better. And finally, if you want to increase word of mouth, right, there's other activities that work really well. And so, one thing that's interesting to me, let me pull this up to the bottom, right, is that you can kind of quickly say, well, I'm really interested in brand awareness, right? Well, co-creation is difficult in that space. Number of visits could get you some notion of it. But if you look down, right, like product reviews and social networks, right, those are a great way to increase brand awareness. So maybe I'll focus some activities on just those spaces, right? Whereas word of mouth, on the other hand, video Photoshop allows you to create a lot of stuff along those lines. Forums and discussions do, right? And then now, once we've established what you're interested in, what forum you're going to use, you can kind of come and get some like KPIs, some key performance indicators directly from this chart, right? So for instance, for product reviews, maybe you just monitor the number of reviews posted if you're interested in brand awareness. Whereas if you're interested in brand engagement, maybe we look at the relevance of the reviews or the number of wish list ads or the length of those reviews. And if you're interested in word of mouth, right, then look at how many reviews people are posting, what's the valence of those reviews, is it positive or negative, right? And that kind of starts to get you some understanding of whether or not your campaign is achieving the appropriate goals. So in the end, your goal should be to move away from fuzzy measurement and toward quantifiable metrics, right? Um, and part of the reason why is because even if you're failing at quantifiable metrics, you at least have some idea how to adjust your efforts, right? Whereas if you're in these kind of fuzzy goal spaces, there isn't a clear next step, right? If you're failing. If you're succeeding, then you don't know why you're succeeding, right? Is the other problem. Now, on the other hand, if you're succeeding and you're using quantifiable metrics to understand what's going on, that's the best possible place to be because then you can just iterate over those cases for success as you go forward, right? So if you want to do this kind of opportunity at home, if you want to take this at home, one thing you could do is take let me double check to make sure it still has that name. It did a little while ago. But you could take the Southwest Stories blog, let's see if it's still there, which is a blog in that exists on the Southwest has in the Southwest Air community, right? And there's all these blogs about the Southwest passengers, essentially what they've done with Southwest, right? Um, and you could look at, let's say you had that blog and you wanted to increase brand awareness, brand engagement, word of mouth. How would you go about doing these? And which do you think would be most important? And then, as a practice exercise, because you are going to be asked to do this for your group project, maybe develop a SMART goal for this campaign based on your answer, right? And this kind of gives you a way to start to think through the process of how to apply the social media ROI concepts directly to an actual firm. Okay. So let me go now and switch over to what your fellow students had to say about the social media ROI aspect. So hold on. Just gonna switch over to some other notes. Um, got it here in just a second. Okay. So there were a couple of great comments I thought I saw in the top hat, and Kimberly helped me collect. So Daniel Atwood said that social media ROI can be measured both quantitative and qualitative. For example, if a company creates a blog for a certain product, the consumer response can be quantitative recorded by views, likes, shares, and time spent on page. That's kind of what we talked about, right? It's in this slide up here, which I'll switch back to, right? Um, Concurrently, it can also be captured by looking at the comments, right? So if you actually pull down the actual text, right, you get some interesting ideas too directly from that. Because social media is a constantly evolving environment, though, largely driven by consumers, companies have to constantly be on top of it and listening and responding to what's going on. Having a finger on this pulse of social media is really critical as it can be a volatile environment that's capable of turning negative in a hurry, right? Um, Nicholas Consuelo talked about that the goal for social media ROI is increasing the overall experience and relationship that consumers have with a particular company or brand. That definitely is the case, and that you can use analytics to assess this. He specifically highlights for brand engagement, you want to analyze the increase in your account followers, the number of average engagements, where you define engagements as likes plus comments per share, right? So this gets us to a concrete notion of how to start measuring social media ROI in these spaces. And then you can start to think about, does the conversation have to appear to be positive or negative? So you can almost go down and have like a set of hierarchical notions that you continue to use to measure ROI overall. Um, Measuring social media ROI is very important because without measuring the performance of your campaign efforts, you won't have any data to establish a benchmark, allowing you to review and optimize for future campaign. And that's an important notion, I think, right? Like our notions of how to measure success in these spaces are going to grow as we go on, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't measure them right off the bat. In fact, we should because it allows us to start to compare those notions over time, right? It may not be the right measurement perfectly the first time, so we may not want to spend a lot of time trying to optimize to it, but we want to collect data at least to know what's happening. I bet Jay Mickelson had a very good answer on is there a best social media channel for every business? He says no. Social media is based on interactions. You need to reach out to your audience where they are. Potential buyers are going to jump on WhatsApp just to see your posts when they spend most of their time listening to podcasts or reading Yelp reviews. And I think that's very important. Go to your customers where they are. Caitlin Pearson talked about the fact that the goal of social media is to be able to understand what's working and help the brand company versus what's not, so the company can visually continue to revise the strategy, right? So it's the analytics notion of social media ROI, really trying to figure out which aspects are working and which aspects are. Um, since marketing is more consumer driven versus marketer driven, providing opportunities for consumers to invest in the brand via connections, creation, consumption, and control is key, and social media applications help facilitate these activities. Um, the company should look at the objectives and then use the objectives to determine which social media application to use. And I agree with all that. I like that notion that especially in the social media space, marketing is driven more by the consumer and not by the marketer. So you need to be more used to kind of allowing the consumer to take control, and the marketer's role is to try and guide that conversation. Finally, Trey Lewis says that measuring ROI for social media marketing starts with the business determining what the business marketing goals are, and that's always important. Don't start measuring anything until you know why you're measuring it and what the goals of measuring it are. For instance, if the business determines that brand awareness is the number one goal, they can easily track those number of followers or less regularly apply likes regularly applied to posts. Um, the amount of analytics could be, all over the place, but a business only increasing awareness would not need very complex analytics. However, if a business was trying to understand how customers are clicking on sale links shared by their social campaign, they would need to track more information. I like that idea too, that social media ROI isn't even the same for every company, right? You need to think about what's appropriate for your particular company to be measuring and looking at. Okay, so that's all the comments I have and all the thoughts on social media ROI. Looks like there aren't any other questions, so I'm going to be wrapping up shortly here. But just to remind you all that, the goal for this week is to watch the videos from Seth Litton if you haven't already. Fascinating discussion about the arbitrage opportunities in marketing. And then I want you to watch week 4, videos 1 to 5. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Read the articles on Follower Factory and contribute to the discussion on Top Hat, and then start working on the introduction and team contract documents. And if you want, I'll mention the team contract briefly. And if you want, also read the chapters 13, 17. So yeah, we didn't talk about the team contract. I'll mention that again next week just so I get to it. Let me put a note in myself for team contract. But I'll look. I'll show it to you just briefly here, so you can kind of see what it's about. So the team contract, where did it go? The team contract was really developed so that to hold you accountable, right? So that all the teams should start off at the beginning of the semester by filling out a team contract where they basically talk about what the team what who's going to be responsible for what part of the team, right? So there's a template up here. Let's see if I can show this to you. So there's a template up on the assignment section of Moodle about this. Okay. Um, and turn that off. Turn that off. Okay. Okay. And so the team contract just kind of talks about what are the objectives and goals, who are the stakeholders, what results, and what would be success, right? And then it has each team member list out what their strengths are and how they're going to contribute. And then, sorry, first list out their strengths and then how they're going to contribute, which is on the next table. And then there's some, discussion about what the norms for the team will be. And then I want each of you to sign that, and you can kind of virtually sign it, right? But sign it somehow, right, to kind of indicate that you all agree to it. And I do this for a number of reasons. First of all, I find that it forces all of you to kind of think about what the project is before you even start, which is a very useful organizing principle. And then the second reason is that because it is a team project, it kind of holds you responsible for doing what you said you were going to do at the beginning. So there's really no excuse for at the end of the semester being like, well, I thought the other people are going to do that, right? It should all be spelled out fairly well in this team contract. Now, it doesn't mean that those can be changed or edited as the semester goes on, but it kind of gives you a baseline to start from. Okay, let's see. So I think that's it for me today. Just remember, watch those videos, read the article on Follower Factory, start working on your introduction to team contract documents, and then read chapters 13 and 17. Thanks, everybody, and I look forward to talking to you 1 week from today. Take care. Bye.